What's up, Hornets fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Hornets Daily podcast. My name is Tayvon. We got ourselves a great show for you guys for today. As always, 4 topics on the Charlotte Hornets, and as we're going down to the off season, we're getting very closer to training camp and trying to get things together, and more news keep on coming out as far as the players and how they're feeling about the trade that happened with LaMelo Ball, of course, and other things that is going around as far as training camp, but also some front office news as well. So let's get into it. I have no quick notes for today because it's a very, very short news day in terms of everything that's going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, please bear in mind, we're trying to get our best effort forward in terms of topics. Is not a lot of topics that's going around. So this is what we're going to have for today. We're going to talk about Brandon Miller, of course. Brandon Miller and the LaMelo Ball trade, in which he came on to the Road Tripping podcast, according to, I believe, Fancast, in which he expressed his thought process during the LaMelo Ball trade. Obviously, we heard about Con Knippel's thought process in the Duke podcast. This is now from Brandon Miller. He says, "It's tough going through a trade deadline. This time, seeing your brothers from day one gone. It hurts, but we all know the NBA game, and I know he will be a great in Minnesota and what they have going on over there. Of course, he still has a lot to learn. I feel like everybody that's young has a lot to learn. So I'm excited to see growth. That was the main thing I was excited for him about last year. Just his leadership growth. I feel like the media has had him looking crazy at times." Following up with the question made by Michelle Petey, she says that, or asked the question, do you feel that this Hornets team could pretty much do something this year? Brandon Miller said, "I've always said if we're a healthy team, we were a dangerous team. We can go a long way. We have shown that we can compete with any team on any given night. I feel like we're adding pieces around me and Con Knippel to help us outcompete everybody." With that being said, obviously Brandon Miller touched on the topic a little bit more in terms of LaMelo Ball. It'll be more comments and quotes coming up very soon about it, of course. But for the meantime, as it is, Brandon Miller obviously, have a heartfelt message to LaMelo Ball. It's pretty much tough to see him going and then, leaving away the next star prospect that the Hornets basically drafted, following him into the dust from that point on. Obviously, it was LaMelo, then Miles, or Miles first, then LaMelo, then Brandon, then Con. So a little bit tough to see, but understand for Brandon Miller, obviously looking forward, trying to see what he can do with his running mate, of course, with Con Knippel. It should be very exciting to see these two players basically coexist at the right time. So hopefully things get a little bit better in terms of Brandon Miller and his psyche for the team. I'm pretty sure he's excited for this season coming up and all the new names that he's going to be playing with, and especially bringing back Kobe White, which I think he was a big fan of, especially from that podcast interview that he had on Road Tripping. So he cannot wait. We cannot wait to see how this is going to basically progress. Obviously, it's a very touching moment with him and LaMelo, but we'll definitely get through sooner or later as time goes along. So let me know in the comment section how you feel about Brandon Miller's podcast, how he's feeling about the team, how he's feeling about LaMelo Ball. Of course, it's a little bit touching, but again, things like this has to happen, or especially in the business of the NBA. So we'll go from there. We're going to go to our second topic, a very quick topic for the first one. Second topic going in, though. What will Charlotte do with their trade exception, ladies and gentlemen? We have a lot of questions about what they're going to do with that $40.7 million LaMelo Ball trade exception. And to be honest with you, it was a post on Twitter as well, on a Charlotte Hornets fan account, in which they also proposed the question, what would you do if you're the Charlotte Hornets and you have 40.7 in trade exception to basically get a player? Now, majority of the players that they can get is abundance, but most of them does not, really fit the category. Like, they can get a Kyrie Irving. They could get LaMelo Ball back again if they wanted to. They can get other players like Trey Murphy. They can get Brandon Ingram, I believe, who makes a little bit below the trade exception. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you have so many guys that you can go after and potentially go for a trade and see what you could do. And the SI article written by today by Zach Roberts explains pretty much a lot of things, right? So He goes on to say the Charlotte Hornets has $40.7 million in trade exception from the LaMelo Ball deal. It's the largest in NBA history. It's a use it or lose it type of situation. The Hornets have until next summer to use it, which means the trade deadline could be wildly interesting. Here's some potential targets to absorb this trade exception if needed. Shaedon Sharpe. Now, Shaedon Sharpe from the Portland Trail Blazers, of course, is making $20.1 million, and it's a logjam right now and currently in the guard position right now in Portland Trail Blazers side, especially with Ja Morant coming in, and you have Damian Lillard, you have Scoot Henderson, you have Drew Holiday, and you have a plethora of shooting guards and guards just in general fitting onto the roster. While the need for the backup point guard is there, by the time the trade deadline arrives, the Hornets may have figured that part out. So adding a versatile wing who has improved every season, is only 22, might be smart. He seems to be falling out of favor with Portland Trail Blazers set to enter a big contract extension. So Blazers may be interested in offloading him and basically getting started with saving some money and a future with Ja Morant from that point on. Tyler Hero is another name that could be potentially up here on the grabs. Tyler Hero makes $33 million per year, and right now Milwaukee Bucks is unlikely to keep Tyler Hero for that long, so flipping him at the deadline for assets before free agency would be smart. The Hornets might be good enough to make a low seed playoff push by then, and they would love Tyler Hero shooting. Plus, since he's on an expiring contract, it will only be a short-term investment for Tyler Hero. So with that in mind, the Charlotte Hornets, obviously keying on Tyler Hero wouldn't be a bad idea. Again, short-term investment in terms of bringing him in. It wouldn't be, in any sort of way a bad thing to bring him in for 1 year, maybe 2 years in that sense of time, and pretty much get him to the Charlotte Hornets system where he is going to be running off of zoom actions. He is going to basically get in double screens. He can put the ball in the basket at a very high rate. So honestly, I believe, he could do that. He can basically help this team make that playoff push, be another star. Of course, his number is going to fluctuate just a little bit more compared to any other person, but he is going to be a guy that can definitely do that at a very, very high rate. And I can't wait to see that from Tyler Hero. Trey Murphy the third. $27 million. Trey Murphy is kind of exactly what the Hornets need outside of a backup guard. He's a big wing that can defend the perimeter really well and shoot lights out from the ball. He seems like a perfect fit for Charles Lee's system, and the New Orleans Pelicans might love getting an offload of assets for him since he is under the team control until 2029. Now, Trey Murphy has been put up in a lot of trade targets, a lot of trade talks in general during this offseason, yet to be moved. Pelicans, it seems like one of those teams that just does not move anybody in terms of star power, in terms of star players, until it gets to a certain point where they just need to. Like right now, I think Zion value has completely diminished compared to everybody else. Now, Trey Murphy obviously being the highest value of the New Orleans Pelicans as it is, and besides maybe Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, of course, and a couple of other players, his value, or Trey Murphy's value, is bar none right now the best one. So with that in mind, Hornets do need a big size wing that can defend and shoot the ball. Trey Murphy does that with an exceptional level, especially with his uptick this year despite the injuries. He looks really good. He could be a potential trade exception target that we can use for the trade deadline and get him. And I wouldn't be mad at the Hornets to basically get him and put him onto the starting lineup, whether it would be a 4, a 3, or a 2. He can definitely do the job at a very well rate. Kyrie Irving is another guy that could be up there. He's very close, very cutting it close, ladies and gentlemen. $39.5 million for Kyrie Irving's contract. The Hornets will only make this move if they were certain the backup point guard rotation couldn't cut it. And because Kyrie Irving cost almost $40 million this season and will jump to $42 million next season, still, if he is healthy, he will be a dynamic addition to the backcourt and give the Hornets an elite offense as it is. Now, I can't imagine a Kyrie Irving offense with Con Knueppel and Brandon Miller, but I do know for this for sure, Coach Charles Lee will not complain about having Kyrie Irving on his team. Kyrie Irving is if not one of the best ball handlers out there in the NBA. You guys already know that. We already know what he presents, what he can do, what he can basically provide for the Charlotte Hornets team. A ISO scorer that can basically put up numbers at a very high rate, but can also play within the team and get his shots off of screens, can get his shots off of just isolation or stampedes or him basically catching the ball in traffic. He can move the ball around. He can basically be that type of player. So it's not that Kyrie can't do the things that is needed for a point guard. It's just more his play style fits a lot better in most categories in terms of him initiating, him creating, and him basically being that guy that can put the ball in the basket. So I can see Kyrie coming on here, has a 2-year stay, not a long-term stay in any sort of way, and basically, come in, help out this young team in terms of veterans, and then pretty much go and try to find contendership somewhere else. And as I said, with Kyrie Irving, with his $39.5 million and then $40 million, somebody's going to pay top dollar for that 40 mil, right? When it comes down to it, $42 million next season, somebody's going to pay top dollar just to add him onto the team and make a big push for the playoffs, I think. I feel as though Kyrie Irving definitely deserves at least some type of shot at the contendership, even though he already won a championship and made it to the finals almost 3 to 4 times in his career. He's going to look for ring chasing again. So I can see Kyrie potentially being traded out of Charlotte, of course, after the situation has completely ended. If we do go for him in that sense. And for that point on, we could possibly trade him for some good value coming back in, because that $40 million exception, while we do get the pick swaps from Minnesota, adding on Kyrie Irving from that point on and basically absorbing all his contract from that trade exception, and then later on going next year and trading him away for a future first-round pick or a couple of first-round picks just to bolster up a team that's only going to use him for a year or two. It sounds like a great solution to me, right? It just sounds great for an asset standing point. It sounds great in terms of killing cap eventually coming in. It just makes sense, right? Jalen Suggs is another name, ladies and gentlemen. Have I mentioned that the Hornets need guard depth? Jalen Suggs isn't a great playmaker or shooter, but he's an outstanding defender, and Charles Lee would probably love having a legitimate lockdown defender to play with every single night. And the Orlando Magic have a new coach and a roster crunch coming up. It wouldn't be surprised if he is made available for the Charlotte Hornets. Now, Jalen Suggs, as I said, is not the best three-point shooter, as I said on the article, of course, but he is a great lockdown defender. He is a person that can put the ball in the basket here and there. And he, plays the game very hard in terms of basically getting some rebounds and attacking the rim. So it is something that Jalen Suggs can do. And I feel as though that the Hornets could potentially bargain with him, potentially getting him at a starting point guard role or as a backup role, because, again, Jalen Suggs has not really proven to a lot of NBA teams that he could be a starting caliber point guard. This is not to say that he cannot start in the NBA. It just feels as though that he's more of the mediocre point guard that you put up there for defense, of course, and he's going to do his job to the best of his ability, but his shooting has went down. His playmaking isn't the best, so that's why you kind of slot him in that shooting guard, point guard role, kind of a combo guard in the necessary sense. And again, he's 6'5". He can deal with guards. He can deal with point guards in a sense and basically bolster them up and basically provide his strength against them on the defensive end. I can see him potentially becoming a backup point guard in the NBA coming soon if the Orlando Magic do deal with him, and then from that point on try to whoever team basically get him, whether it be the Hornets or whether it be another team, will try to basically implement him off the bench and have a role for him, because he's still a basketball player nonetheless, and he's still productive as a basketball player. He is just not a good shooter or playmaker right now in terms of last season. So we'll see if Jalen Suggs can basically do something with that. DeJounte Murray is another name for the New Orleans Pelicans, in which I mentioned the Pelicans likely being happy to bring in assets, and they will be more inclined to move on from DeJounte Murray. Of course, his contract is bad. He's a bad contract. The Hornets are a somewhat mediocre team currently right now. Yes, we could say that. They have talent. Don't get me wrong. They have talent. They have talent that they can basically get up to a play-in spot as of right now, realistically, right? But in terms of actual hunt for a contendership for a playoff or a championship. That is bar none. That is 0% right now, currently the goal for the Charlotte Hornets. And it's not to say that Charlotte cannot get up there. So why not bring in a bad contract that could potentially play up to his value? Again, same thing like Kyrie, same like the older players that's out there, and you can bring them up into value and potentially bring them in and then trade them later on for more assets and more stockpiling of assets, to where you have a very acceptable guard play coming out the backup point guard with DeJounte Murray, who has shown plenty of times in his career that he can be a backup point guard, can be a starting point guard or shooting guard, and can basically do the role just fine. Now, his timeline doesn't fit, and somewhat he is expensive, but the Hornets, again, need a backup point guard. Murray would be one of the better options if he is available, which is likely with his $32.8 million contract currently has it stand. So again, it's not a bad situation using that trade exception to basically get another backup point guard currently right now, and one that fits the timeline perfectly for what this team needs. Now, Shaedon Sharpe, I'm pretty sure, is far from a situation where he is going to basically get traded from the Portland Trailblazers, right? I think they're going to keep their youth as much as possible. They believe in Denny. I believe they're going to believe in Shaedon Sharpe. They're going to pay Shaedon Sharpe some way, somehow. And they're going to try to basically pay out Ja Morant from that point on, if he, progresses and actually fixes his attitude and everything towards the NBA and towards the NBA team that he is currently on. I can see, Shaedon Sharpe staying around, right? But if they decide, well, Shaedon Sharpe does get injured a little bit, maybe we don't have to give him a contract. Maybe you just let him walk from that point on. We don't want to go past the second apron. Then it gets a little bit from there, right? And that's where Charlotte can swoop in, take the 22-year-old, 23-year-old during that time, and potentially bring him in as a guard that could help out this Charlotte Hornets team in an immense way. Now, there's going to be a lot of guard talent coming in with Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, and Shaedon Sharpe, if that is possible. But regardless or not, it's still something to look at. Tyler Hero, of course, as I said, it will be a short term. I don't think anybody, especially after the Bam incident, kind of wants Tyler Hero. Like, obviously, you want him for his shooting and scoring, but you don't want him to be the franchise player. You don't want him to be the player that comes in and basically be the star player. You want him to basically be a core player, six-man, off the bench, if anything, as of right now. And I don't think Tyler Hero believes that he is a six-man currently right now in his current career. So that's something to look after. Trey Murphy would be a perfect fit for the Charlotte Hornets. I do not believe that we are going to get Trey Murphy, but if a trade does happen, I wouldn't be surprised that Trey Murphy comes here and plays power forward and somebody moves up to the center, or somebody basically moves down from that point on, and we try to see what we can do. Because Trey Murphy, as I said, as far as a guard go, as far as backup guards go, I don't believe that, he's going to play, obviously, point guard. He's going to play shooting guard, small forward, power forward. That is his positions. That is where he fits comfortably at. He's a big wing that can definitely do the job at either 2, 3, or 4 spots if needed for him. So I think Trey Murphy is fine if as far as a pickup, and I think he garners starting attention, but again, it depends on the Charlotte Hornets and what they want to do and what Coach Charles Lee wants to do with that roster. Kyrie Irving, of course, would be a crazy pickup, but again, I feel like they're just going to use him for a little bit and then try to trade him off for value with that $42 million is a lot of money. They're going to try to trade him for some type of exception to where a team bolster up their roster with star talent as much as possible. I think that's the route. I think that's where they're going to go to. Jalen Suggs, of course, I don't believe he is starting caliber. You could probably put him as the backup guard, but why would you pay $32.4 million for a backup point guard in Jalen Suggs? And then DeJounte Murray, same thing, 32.8, bad contract. You bring him in, you try to see if you could have him play in terms of value. If not, you set him out or buy him out from that point on, and you collect all the assets from that trade. So that is the trade exception talk. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about those trade exception options. This was from Sports Illustrated, written by Zach Roberts. We're going to go into our third topic for today. Hoopswire has some Charlotte debt plans, ladies and gentlemen, and they talk about it in the Hoops Wire. Of course, they talk on the Cavaliers, Jonathan Kuminga, Peyton Watson, Hornets, and Derek White, but they have it on the Hornets, right? So this is what they had to say. The Hornets may have or have more players than the roster spots. This means someone has to go. Charlotte currently has 17 players underneath standard contract and will need to get it down to 15. That may not be easy after the offseason that reshaped the roster around Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, and Kobe White. The Hornets have moved on from the Melo Ball, Miles Bridges, and added veterans such as Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and Naz Reid. Listed is Trey Mann, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Pat Connaughton has 3 names worth watch in terms of watching, in terms of basically being cut from the roster or potentially being traded. Mann is more than likely an instant group. Before the back injury derailed him, he looks like a possible long-term 6-man for the Charlotte Hornets. Last season was a struggle, but the Hornets are not exactly overflowing with ball handlers. Dorian Finney-Smith could be hard to move because of his contract. Charlotte acquired him for the Hornets for 3 second-round picks, but he still owed more than $40 million in his final 3 years of his deal, despite the 2 other years being non-guaranteed. Connaughton may have the simplest decision financially. He is entering his final year of his contract at $3.8 million, and though he made the roster last season entering camp, is no sure thing. In other words, Charlotte has some depth, is now to decide which depth actually fits. So from that point on, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see if that is going to continue on, and we will see if the Charlotte Hornets are going to make a move. That was Hoops Hype, written by Sam Amico, and that was written literally yesterday around 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it was great to see at least a little bit of the same news that we've been coming across of, but it does give a little bit more depth now, right? We have 3 players that it should be a cut candidate from the Charlotte Hornets. Pat Connaughton, Trey Mann, and Dorian Finney-Smith. We'll see who is going to get cut here. Obviously, in the comment section, I already let you guys know, or pretty much ask you guys who you think is going to be cut. I will not ask that again because we already said this about twice. So you guys already know. This is just more news just to add on top of it from Sam Amico, and he's more in depth with it now more than before. So we're going to go into the last topic of today. Our 4th topic and last one is a Sports Illustrated article once again, but this is more in terms of the best point guard option right now for the Charlotte Hornets. And they have a lot of options to go to, right? They have so many things that they can go to in terms of ranking the backup point guard options that's out there in free agency that is left currently for this team. Now, written by, of course, Zach Roberts again from August 3rd, which is pretty much 2 days ago. He reaches out and says that the Charlotte Hornets need a backup point guard. Christian Anderson Jr. is probably not quite ready to run the offense as a secondary guard, and with a stint with the G League more than likely necessary. Sean James and Trey Mann aren't good options either as of right now, and the Hornets don't have much else in the way of being a true point guard, so they need to push external options, that including some of the following options that he is about to name. He names one of the options that is very clear, and it's Russell Westbrook. The spacing would be horrible with Russell Westbrook, but he can pass like so few others available guards right now. He wouldn't have too much shooting with all the Hornets have, so he will probably work past his glaring offensive weakness to make room for his facilitating. What we'll take is just only take a cheap 1-year contract for Russell Westbrook. Now, Killian Hayes is another guy that he put up there, and again, Killian Hayes makes me barf in the mouth as well, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, I understand. But Killian Hayes is not very good, but like Westbrook, he can pass. The Hornets backup point guard, and that's all he needs to do. He averaged 9.7 assists per 100 possessions and to just 3.7 turnovers for his career, means that he's able to get the ball in the hands of the Hornet shooter. He will also be ridiculously cheap and still young enough to recapture some of the magic that made him a lottery pick, and that only would take a cheap 1-year contract. Now, Reed Sheppard is an idea that, we could potentially look at in terms of trading. Reed Sheppard is a former top draft pick, but hasn't lived up to the billing, and he has been limited, of course, from the Rockets. The Rockets will get back Fred VanVleet, so Sheppard may not have many minutes on the floor. The Hornets could use his positional flexibility. They will like his shooting very much. Well, it only take one young player. And I believe that one young player should be Ryan Coburn, because the Rockets are looking for a center to pretty much back up, if anything, in case. And again, Steven Adams just now coming back just in case of situation. So we'll see how that goes. They will have one young player and 2 second-round picks for Reed Sheppard, of course, which I believe they can do that in a very fast pace. That's exactly what Zach Roberts said. This is not for me. This is not a trade for me in that sense. Scoot Henderson is another person that they have as a backup point guard option. He says the Blazers have too many point guards. They don't seem to be sold on Scoot Henderson long term. If they are willing to part ways with Henderson, he won't cost as much and he'll be on a 1-year deal. We can also reset his value by bridging gap till Christian Anderson Jr. is ready. It will only take one expiring contract, 2 or 3 second-round picks for Scoot Henderson, which I believe that is a deal if we do take him from that point on. Last but not least is Jrue Holiday. The same logic applies for Scoot Henderson applies for Jrue Holiday. He is older and more expensive, so the Blazers will be more interested in moving on from him. He'll also be a perfect addition because he is an excellent defender, and Coach Charles Lee has coached him twice, and he will be perfect for the backup point guard role, especially teaching these younger players how to play the game of basketball and also on the defensive end as well. But we'll take part of that $40.7 million trade exception, of course, from the LaMelo Ball trade and potentially 2 second-round picks. So that is our point guard options according to Zach Roberts of Sports Illustrated. You guys let me know who you guys feel is the best option. Of course, Jrue Holiday has been named a lot, but let me know if the other options make sense to you. Do you think Scoot Henderson is a person? Do you feel that Killian Hayes or Russell Westbrook is a person from that point on? Do you feel Reed Shepherd is a solid pickup? I think Reed Shepherd wouldn't be a bad option to basically play backup point guard for the Charlotte Hornets team. So you guys let me know. You guys also let me know how you think this show is done. As we are finished for today, make sure you leave a thumbs up on the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as we hit 1.15K. We do appreciate you. We're very close to hitting that 1.2. Can't wait to see what we can do from this point on, especially going into training camp. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you hit that notification bell as we put out a video almost every day at 11 or 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. More than likely for this one is going to be 11:30 a.m. Besides from that, ladies and gentlemen, we do appreciate you guys. My name is Tayvon. You guys have a great rest of your day from the Hornets Daily Podcast. Peace out, everybody.